Namaste and Namaskar. Welcome to the Temple of Kriya Yoga. My name is Abhinanda, and it's really wonderful to be here in person once again. It's been a long time coming. We had our opening of the Chicago location of the temple, it was on the 25th, so two weeks ago, 2 Sundays ago. And this is our first in-person noon meditation. We had a nice showing of people when we opened on the 25th, and now our expectation is that more and more we'll have in-person noon meditations here. When we don't have a person here physically delivering the noon meditation, we'll be showing what's on the website on this TV that's behind me. So the hope is that we begin to rebuild our spiritual community, the temple community, once again, and people know that we're here and know that we can gather in person. So the title of the noon meditation today is Practicing Detachment and Opening to Change. There's been a lot of change with the temple, and so I'll talk a little bit about that today. But I would like us just to begin with an opening prayer, and I'm going to light the jyoti here that's behind me, this candle. And in our tradition of Kriya Yoga, often when we begin sitting meditation, we do what's called a resurrection breath. We turn to the left, look over our left shoulder, and just give a double exhalation. And what that does is it empties the lungs so that we can begin afresh. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes and just join me mentally in this opening prayer. May the infinite Lord of life, love, and laughter bless you at this moment. May each and every cell of your being be healed, healthy, and whole. May your entire mind-body complex be filled to overflowing with vim, vigor, and vitality. May you truly find that which you seek, surely, swiftly, and most harmoniously. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Once again, namaste. The Om Shanti, because we have a couple of people who have not been to the temple before, the Om Shanti is an expression of peace. So we're just sort of inviting a vibration of peace within ourselves and in our environment when we chant that Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, as I said, the noon meditation today, entitled Practicing Detachment, Opening to Change. It's been said a number of times that change is the constant. And Kriyananda, my teacher, Goswami Kriyananda, used to like to refer to the tale of Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. And when we think about that poem, sort of in a mystical sense, what happened to Humpty? He fell he fell from the wall, but he fell into time. And it's the case that in the realm of time and space, change is the constant. Change is what's happening all the time in the realm of time and space. And so we're all little Humpty Dumptys. We've all fallen into time. We live in this realm of time and space, and as we fall into time, we fall into duality. So there was before, and there's after. There's inside and there's outside. Humpty is broken into many, many pieces. We have all sorts of dualities within us, in the environment in which we interact. And there's this wonderful, if you're not familiar with it, a wonderful series of interviews with Joseph Campbell that was shown on PBS years ago. It was back in the 80s. And it's still, I think, one of the most watched series on PBS. And in this interview, Bill Moyers, this wonderful interviewer, writer, author, is interviewing Joseph Campbell, who spent his whole life studying comparative mythology, comparative religions. And Moyers says, again, this is an interview, so there's back and forth. Moyers says, why do we think in terms of opposites? And Campbell says, because we can't think otherwise. Campbell says, Moyers says, that's the nature of reality in our time. And Campbell says, that's the nature of our experience of reality. And Moyers says, man, woman, life, death, good, evil. Campbell picks it up and says, I and you, this and that, true and untrue. Every one of them has its opposite. Everything we can think of has its opposite. But mythology suggests that behind that duality, there is a singularity over which this duality plays like a shadow game. Eternity is in love with the production of time, says the poet Blake, and that's Campbell quoting him. And so here we fall into time. We in this on this earth plane, we cannot be without duality. But the path of yoga is about union. And so we have this this practice of this, bringing the left and the right together into the center. And in Kriya Yoga and other yoga traditions, we have the idea of the main channels. There's a left channel, Ida, a right channel, Pingala, and then a central channel, Sushumna. And it's in the center pillar of Jewish mysticism, that we can transcend the dualities, that we can transcend these opposites. And so going back to Joseph Campbell and this interview with Bill Moyers, they're talking about the Garden of Eden in the fall from the garden, and the so-called fall. Moyers says, is the story trying to tell us that prior to what happened in the garden to destroy us, there was a unity of life? And Campbell says, it's a matter of planes of consciousness. It doesn't have to do with anything that happened. It's not historical. There is a plane of consciousness where you can identify yourself with that which transcends pairs of opposites. Moyers says, which is? Campbell says, it's unnameable. It's unnameable. It is transcendent of all names. And then Moyers says, God? And Campbell says, God is an ambiguous word in our language because it appears to refer to something that is known. But the transcendent is unknowable and unknown. God is transcendent, finally, of anything like the name God. God is beyond names and forms. Meister Eckhart said that the ultimate and highest leave-taking is leaving God for God. leaving your notion of God for an experience of that which transcends all notions. So again, in the tradition of yoga, we're yoking, we're bringing the opposites together so as to transcend to something that goes beyond thought. There's that famous notion that I think it's on some bumper stickers that meditation is not what you think. It's the idea that meditation is somehow transcendent of thought. Not the practice so much, because in the practice we're in the mud, we've got all sorts of thoughts going around. But when we actually experience a state of meditation, we're actually transcending the dualities, the opposites. We're transcending thought. We're transcending our notions of what the reality is. So this idea that change is the only constant, you might think that comes from Lao Tzu or some other Eastern philosopher, but it actually, the phrase comes from Heraclitus. And Heraclitus was this Greek philosopher, pre-Socratic, 500 BCE, so around the time of the Buddha. We have Heraclitus in Ephesus, and he coins this phrase, change is the only constant. He's also the person who said, you can't put your foot in the same river twice. So he was all about grappling with this idea of what's going on in our experience of life, our experience of ourselves. And what he realized or came to understand is that in this realm of time and space, change is the only constant. Everything is changing all the time. The glass in these windows, we can't see it, but it's actually gravity is coming, the molecules are coming down. And it may be many, many, many years before that completely transforms, but everything is transforming all the time. Everything is changing all the time. You included, me included. And yet we find ourselves trying to hold on to things. We're trying to hold on to something, make something permanent. Maybe it's a relationship. It might be, this relationship is so good, I don't want it to change. I don't want it to go anywhere. And so we're grasping, we're clinging. It might be, if we're in good health, it might be we're trying to hold on to our good health. We don't want to lose our good health. It could be even an experience, a pleasant experience. Oftentimes we have a positive experience, and it's positive until we realize, oh, this isn't going to last, and then we start grieving already. Before it's even over, we're like, oh, how do I hold on to this? How do I? And the truth is, because everything is changing, if we can make our peace with that, then we can allow the river to flow. And we're not grasping, we're not trying to get something to be permanent, to stay with us. Because we're not going to find permanence in this realm of time and space. Again, there are practices, and we'll speak about those today, that we can have in this realm, in this physical embodiment, that allows us to transcend the realm of opposites or the dualities. But as long as we're in this place and we're interacting, there's a sense of I and you, inside and outside. And that's the realm in which we live. So there's this wonderful quote from, are you familiar with Swami Vivekananda? Swami Vivekananda was this great yogi and sage who actually came to Chicago to the Parliament of Religions in 1894. He was here in 1893. 1894, Parliament of Religions, and he represented Hinduism in that parliament, where we had people coming from all over the planet to gather in Chicago in 1894 to talk about religion. And here's what he says about change. He says, and this was part of his address: every particle in this body is continually changing. No one has the same body for many minutes together, and yet we think of it as the same body. So with the mind, one moment it is happy, another moment unhappy, one moment strong, another weak, an ever-changing whirlpool. That cannot be the spirit, which is infinite. So he's acknowledging that this change is occurring all the time. There's constant change, just like Heraclitus, change is the constant. And yet he's saying there's something that transcends change. There's something beyond that change. And first we need to make peace with the change. Otherwise we're battling our lives. We're trying to hold on to that which is ephemeral, trying to hold on to things that we can't make permanent. So thinking about this, you've probably heard the term detachment. And I think a lot of times detachment gets a bad rap. It's perceived as somehow uncaring, sort of removed. But let me share this. This is a famous anecdote. You've probably heard this anecdote before. It's about the way you catch a monkey in India. And what one does if you want to catch a monkey in India is you drop a handful of nuts in a jar. And then what happens is the monkey goes in to grab the nuts. And as he takes hold of the nuts, he can't get his hand out of the jar. Now you've caught a monkey, right? And all that needs to happen is for that monkey to open his hands and let go of the nuts. And then he just removes his hand. But we're holding on. All of us. We're holding on to something. And it's perhaps a good exercise to think about, what are the nuts I'm holding on to? What is it that's got me? What is it that I'm grasping at in this life? Because it's probably catching us. It's probably keeping us, in a sense, hostage. So the idea in yoga is that attachment leads to suffering, detachment leads to freedom. Attachment leads to suffering, detachment leads to freedom. But again, we can confuse this idea of detachment. We can think, oh, detachment, I don't need to worry about making a living for myself. I don't need to cultivate my relationships. I just won't care about any of those things. And here again is where yoga has such great wisdom to offer us. The Bhagavad Gita, which is arguably one of the central texts of all yoga traditions, really, teaches us. It talks about the idea of really committing, doing as best we can at whatever we're doing, and not investing in the outcome. So we're committed to our process, but we're not committed to a particular outcome. The outcome, in some sense, is out of our control. It's going to be what it is. But again, that's not an excuse for not doing the best that we can. It's not an excuse for not showing up. It's not an excuse for not bringing our entire being to whatever it is, our relationship, our job, our meditation practice. when we sit to meditate, there's no guarantee that we're going to experience enlightenment in this sitting. But that's not a reason to hold back. That's not a reason not to bring our full-heartedness and our full mindfulness to the practice. So in the Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling Arjuna that acting with detachment means doing the right thing for its own sake, because it needs to be done without worrying about success or failure. If you're not familiar with this story of the Gita, part of this story is about this figure, Arjuna, who's out on the field of battle, and he looks out and he's seeing really these relatives, these relations that he is to do battle with. And he says, I'm not sure I want to do this. And his charioteer happens to be God. And in these stories, as Joseph Campbell might suggest, and as my teacher Kriyananda repeatedly suggested, told us, we need to interpret these figures symbolically. They're all part of us. So Arjuna's in you, and Krishna's in you. Krishna, the God consciousness, Arjuna, the general who's on the field and maybe a little bit reluctant to do the task that he's assigned to. He's wearing a particular hat, and as he's wearing this hat, he's thinking, maybe I don't really want to do what I signed up for. And the Gita is telling us, no, we bring our full commitment to wherever we find ourselves, to whatever circumstance. It's not like we find ourselves in a circumstance and say, oh, this isn't where I want to be. I want to be somewhere else. We are in this circumstance and we face it full on, whatever the circumstance is, whatever the challenge is, whatever the task at hand is. It's in our meditation, or perhaps in the quiet after our meditation, that we can make some informed choices, hopefully some wisdom-filled choices about the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But when the task is at hand, that's not, or when we're on the field of battle, that's not the time to be saying, I'm not sure I want to be here. That really is the time to commit ourselves fully. And again, all of these spiritual texts are interpreted symbolically. The field of battle is not out there. It's internal to us. And in some sense, it is this battle with the opposites. We're trying, we like one side better than the other side. We like the things that are tasty better than the things that are not tasty. We like the things that we deem good better than the things that we deem bad. And so there's this constant tension within us, always battling. And what we're trying to do is, in a sense, make peace with these opposites and ultimately come to a center point that includes the opposites, but also is a third thing that transcends the opposites. So in the Gita, Krishna repeatedly reminds Arjuna not to cop out, not keep doing your best in whatever role that you're functioning in. The Gita points out, for instance, that regarding this idea of detachment, that we don't have to give up our families. We don't have to give up our capacity for enjoyment of life. But we do need to challenge our tendency to identify with this body, to identify with our personalities, which, again, as we've been referring to, change is the constant, right? This body is constantly changing. This body eventually is going to fall away. Does that mean the end of me? It means certainly the end of me, this body, this personality that is always in change. It's always changing. And yet, as Vivekananda suggested, as all the sages down through time, the great yogis of history have suggested to us, there's something that continues. There's some part of us, and that part of us that continues is a part that transcends these opposites, that contains but isn't falling into these opposites. So again, there can be this this misunderstanding or misperception that detachment is somehow being removed from life. But really, it's nothing of the sort. There's this wonderful research that was done by Richie Davidson, who's at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. A great neuroscientist, also a meditation practitioner, a buddy with the Dalai Lama. And Richie Davidson, in one of his studies, was looking at advanced meditators and comparing them to novice meditators, beginning meditators, and non-meditators. And one of the things that they did, one of the studies they conducted, was to apply a sense of pain. It was a hot, very high temperature, and they could do this without any sort of physical effect. So there was no, it got past the people that review this in terms of safety for participants and so forth. But they were able to apply this very palpable pain, and it's sort of a Pavlovian experiment. They told the participants, you're going to hear a tone, and then 10 seconds later, you're going to experience a pain. And then they were looking at, with brain imaging, with the wonderful imaging technology we have now, they were looking at what happened to the brains of the advanced meditators and the beginning meditators and the non-meditators. And what they discovered is that, after one of these experiences, and you hear the tone, you experience the pain, that the novice meditators and the non-meditators, they were essentially, they could see through the brain imaging, they were basically bracing themselves. They'd hear the tone, and then they were preparing themselves for the pain. Just like if I really brace myself, it won't hurt as bad. And what was interesting was they were looking at the advanced meditators, and the tone came, and there was no bracing. There was no change to what was going on, what was happening in terms of brain activity. So the advanced meditators hear the tone, and then they experience the pain. And what was interesting about this is the advanced meditators, the brain imaging showed that they were experiencing the pain more fully than the novice meditators, but not in anticipation. So the tone would come, the beginning, and the novice meditators and the non-meditators were bracing themselves in preparation for this pain that would come. And then they experienced the pain, but they didn't experience it as fully as the advanced meditators, who had no anticipation, even though they'd been told and they'd actually had the experience, tone and then pain. What does this say to us? It says that with our meditation practice, we can become more and more adept at being in the moment, right? One of the things about change, this duality that we fall into when we're in the realm of time and space, is that we're often spending our time in anticipation of what's going to come next, or we're dwelling on what happened just a moment ago. So that was another interesting finding from this research by Richie Davidson, is the advanced meditators, once the pain stopped, once this application of pain stopped, they the brain imaging showed that their brains, their minds, returned to normal just almost immediately. Experience the pain, experiencing it fully, and then it's gone. Whereas the novice meditators were still, the brain imaging showed that they were still experiencing the pain even after the pain application stopped. And they were probably already beginning to anticipate the next sound and the next dose of pain, right? That's us, most of us, right? And what we're trying to do in our meditation practice is become more adept at being not in the future, not doing some time travel into the future, anticipating what's going to come, what's the next shoe that's going to drop, what's the next bad thing that's going to happen, and not dwelling on the past. Gosh, I really screwed up that conversation. I said the wrong things, or why didn't I behave better at work yesterday, or whatever it is. That last family interaction just went off the rails because of what I said. We dwell on the past. We're projecting ourselves into the future. With the practice of meditation, we're increasingly moving towards that center spot, which is the now, the present moment, which is not in the future, it's not in the past, it's not in anticipation, and it's not dwelling on some regret. So this idea that with detachment we feel less is not true. If you interact with people who have meditated for quite a long time, they're not numbed out. They're feeling their life. They're experiencing their life very fully. It's not some, I'm walking around, I'm kind of numb and disconnected with the world. No, it's not that at all. It's a very full, very rich inner life and a life of relationships, if they're functioning outside of the cave. I mean, some meditators are living in a cave and not interacting much with other folks. So this idea that the practice of detachment is somehow going to lead to indifference or an experience of depression or numbness just isn't the case. It's a misunderstanding of the yogic concept of detachment. But so then the question: how do we fall in love, or how do we start a business, or how do we get a medical degree if we're practicing detachment? And it's back to the Gita, and it's back to this idea of focusing on the process and not the outcome. I've known people that have gone through medical school, law school, myself having gone through graduate school to earn a PhD. The people that focus on the end don't fare so well. The people that are really committed to the process of learning, of growing skills, of becoming more informed, more educated, those are the people that thrive in that environment. If I'm just there to get to the finish line, it doesn't go so well. But if I can really commit to the process, it doesn't even matter whether I finish or not. I'm having a rich, full experience right now. And so that's what yoga is inviting of us, to commit to the process. There's a wonderful book out there, I forget the author, but the book is Wanting Enlightenment is a Bad Idea. And it's that idea. The inclination to hear the word enlightenment and to know that that's a real possibility in this lifetime is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. But we can get so committed to the outcome that we sit down on our meditation mat and we're missing the experience that we're having because we have some notion of what should be happening, of what experience I should be having. And that's being focused on enlightenment rather than right here, right now, which is the only place enlightenment can be, is right in this moment. So detachment is a practice, working with this idea that change is the constant in our life. Is a practice. It's not some place that perhaps we arrive at it eventually in our spiritual journey, but for most of us, it is a process in itself, a daily commitment of sitting down and practicing my meditation, which is, from my perspective, is a way of practicing detachment. In Sanskrit, the term detachment, and the word we use in yoga is vairagya. It's spelled Vairagya. And it's interesting that in another core text of yoga, we have the Gita, we have the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, that attachment and non-attachment are concepts that are mentioned many, many times in the Yoga Sutras, whereas asana is mentioned once in the Yoga Sutras as a preparation for meditation. And so here in the West, in the United States, most of us are walking around thinking yoga is practicing our postures, doing the asanas. But what this is telling us is that attachment and non-attachment are really even more central practices of yoga than practicing our postures, which ultimately are meant to prepare us for the practice of meditation. So vairagya is translated as detachment or dispassion. And in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the essence of vairagya is described as dispassion is the conscious mastery of the control of desire for objects seen, perceived, or heard. And I wanted to share this is again a quote. This from George Feuerstein, who is a yogic practitioner and scholar, and he's going to quote in this passage. He's going to quote another sage, Nisargadatta Maharaj, this fairly contemporary yogic sage who lived in India his entire life. But Feuerstein says, the real man or the real woman is the eternal gender-transcending subject, the essential self, capital S, of all beings and things. This ultimate unity cannot be sensed, experienced, or strictly speaking, even known. However, it can be realized by going beyond all the mechanisms of sensing, experiencing, and knowing. In that case, it reveals itself to itself. It is by nature self-luminous. In other words, the self, with a capital S, shines forth as soon as we withdraw all our diverse mental projections from it. When we desist from identifying it as our body, our mind, or the external world. As Nisargadatta Maharaj, a contemporary master of Jnana Yoga, put it, if you really find out what you are, you will see that you are not an individual, you're not a person, you're not a body. And people who cling to their body identity are not fit for this knowledge. If you really want to understand this, you must give up your identification with the body. This is Nisargadatta Maharaj. If you really want to understand this, you must give up your identification with the body. By all means, make use of the body, but don't consider yourself to be the body while acting in this world. Identify yourself with the consciousness which dwells in the body. Identify yourself with the consciousness which dwells in the body. So long as you identify yourself as the body, your experience of pain and sorrow will increase day by day. That is why you must give up this identification, and you should take yourself as the consciousness. When the body falls, the principle which always remains is you. If you identify yourself with the body, you will feel that you are dying, but in reality, there is no death because you are not the body. Let the body be there or not be there. Your existence is always there. It is eternal. So identifying with the consciousness that is each of us, and not with the change that is the body, that is this realm of duality that we're living in, this I and you, inside and outside. If we identify there, it's constantly changing and we're constantly grasping, trying to hold on to something, that's permanent, something that will last. And what Nisargadatta Maharaj and Vivekananda and the sages and saints of the yogic traditions down through history have said is, at our core, what our true essence is consciousness. Just pure awareness. I am that I am. And how do we get in touch with that? We meditate. Kriyananda, my teacher, often repeated this piece of wisdom. Meditation is not about getting things. It's about letting go. So this idea that we're living in a realm of opposites, of duality, and that we have these attachments to something, it's not a moralistic thing. Practicing detachment is not moralistic. It's just not delusional. We can't hold on to things that are constantly changing, can we? I mean, it's impossible. It's like trying to hold water in our hands. It's constantly changing. And so it's not a moralistic thing. To practice detachment is not about, oh, you're good, you practice detachment. Oh, you're bad, you're so attached. It's just about stepping out of a delusion that we could actually hold on to something that's constantly changing. Right? We're in this new temple setting. For years and years, decades, we were in a different building. I experienced a tremendous sense of sadness, of loss, when we ultimately, powers beyond me, decided to leave that location. And yet, change is the constant. Change is the thing we have to open up to. Here we are in a new setting. Can we open to this experience? Can we really embrace it fully for what it is? Or do we dwell on what was? Change is the constant. And what we have to get in touch with in our meditation practice and even in our going about our daily lives is the identification with consciousness rather than anything that's constantly changing. So another thing that my teacher, Swami Abhinanda, was often very intentional about was not referring to I. It's not I, the body. It's the body. There's this little video that's up on our website now in which Kriyananda introduces himself. And he says, this is called Kriyananda. But he doesn't say, I'm Kriyananda. Right? I started today saying, I'm Abhinanda. But that's a misidentification. I'm identifying with something that's changing all the time. And so it takes great intentionality, great really awareness on our part to continually identify as the consciousness and not the continually changing aspect of this experience of life. The consciousness is the continuity that runs through, that is, it doesn't change, it's the spirit, the conscious awareness. So I thought that maybe we could just sit and practice meditation just for a few minutes and just work with this idea of letting go, right? With meditation, we often have an object of meditation. It could be a mantra, Om. It could be our big toe. It could be the body in a practice called the body scan. We're moving through the body, and that is the object of meditation. In all of these practices, it's recognized that there are going to be things that arise in our awareness. It's a thought. Maybe it's a sound from the street, or maybe it's the sound of HVAC in this room. It could be a sensation, a different kind of sensation. Oh, I'm tired of sitting. My back is hurting. Those kinds of things that come up in our awareness, they're not bad. We simply acknowledge them, we let them go, and we return to the object of our meditation, which again could be our big toe, it could be a mantra. In this practice that I'm going to invite us into, we're just going to attend to the breath. And what's wonderful about the breath is it's with us until we're no longer in this body. So it's always there for us to return to. And if we can attune to the subtle, if we can really begin to be aware of the subtlety, we begin to notice that no breath is the same. Every breath is a new experience. And so let's just, if you'd like, you can gently close your eyes. If you'd like to have your eyes remain open, just focus on a point a few feet in front of you. So whether eyes are open, eyes closed, we want to assume a good meditative posture at attention, without tension. So the shoulders are back, the chest is open, the belly may be in just slightly, at attention without tension. The chin might be just slightly tucked. And as you experience just your body here in this moment, I invite you to find your breath, just wherever you notice the breath. Maybe it's in the belly, maybe it's the chest, maybe it's the throat. Maybe it's in the nostrils. Wherever you sense the breath, for the next few moments, let that be the object of meditation for you. When a thought arises, and we're going to call every thought, every feeling, every sensation, we're just going to call it thought for now. So when a thought arises, we simply notice it, acknowledge it, let it go, and bring ourselves back to the breath. So again, you may be aware of the breath in the belly, in the chest, in the throat, or in the nostrils, wherever you're finding it. Let that be the focus, the object of your meditation. And we're just observing the breath. This is the tricky part. We're not trying to control it. We're just a witness to the breath. We're just seeing it, as it flows in or as it flows out. We're not trying to control it. We're not trying not to control it. We're simply letting the breath breathe itself. As thoughts arise, and again, a thought could be hearing a sound, it could be a physical sensation in the body, it could be an emotion, a feeling, or it could be a thought like, when's this going to be over? What am I going to have for lunch today? We're going to call all of that thinking. And as you become aware of something other than the breath, simply acknowledge it, let it go, and bring your awareness back to the breath. In this couple of minutes, you may have wandered away from the breath multiple times. And that's okay. The practice is simply to notice thinking, and to bring ourselves back to the breath, which is always in the present moment, and which is always changing. If you find yourself caught up in a particular thought, remember the monkey and the nuts and the jar. And simply let go. Open the hand. Let go. Come back to the breath. It's a very, very simple practice, and it's a very challenging practice. And we'll bring this short meditation practice to a close. You might just wiggle your toes, or wiggle your fingers, move your head from side to side. If you haven't already, when you're ready, very slowly opening the eyes. Shanti. Hopefully that gives you a sense of how it is that in our everyday practice of meditation, we're practicing detachment. We're practicing letting go, right? Every thought that arises, that we recognize, that we acknowledge, that we notice, and that we then let go and return to our object of meditation. We're practicing detachment. We all have thoughts. The question is, do I have a thought, or does the thought have me? Just like the monkey. Can we open our hand? Can we release? Oh, that's such a good thought. I just want to follow it to the end. That's not the meditation practice. That's for later. Wonderful thoughts, wonderful insights arise in our meditation. And what we want to do is we want to hold on to them. And then we've lost our meditation practice. So the idea is that with our meditation, we're practicing this idea of detachment. But again, it's not a practice of somehow numbing out to our life. Your life will be richer, fuller, more filled with all of the things of life. The so-called positive and so-called negative. And we don't have the capacity for all of that richness if we're judging it. This is positive, this is negative. We know this from psychological research again, that those of us who can experience greater joy also experience great sadness. We don't get to choose. I just want to feel joy. No, we also feel sadness. And with our practice, we don't dwell in it. We don't get hijacked by it. We're not stuck in it. Like the research that I mentioned, Richie Davidson conducting. We experience it, and then we let it go. We experience it fully, and then we let it go. And we don't brace ourselves for the next bad thing that's going to happen. Or put off our life for the good thing that we think should be happening. We're open. We're experiencing life as it arises. And we're feeling it fully. So it was Jack Kornfield who says, if we can recognize that everything that has a beginning has an ending and make our peace with it, all will be well. And in the Ashtavakra Gita, one who has finally learned that it is the nature of objects to come and go without ceasing, rests in detachment and is no longer subject to suffering. So this is our practice, is working with what's now, what's in front of us, what's arising in this moment, feeling it fully, experiencing it completely, and then letting it go, not trying to hold on to something that is impermanent and trying to make it permanent. So with that, let's just end with our closing prayer, and just want to say one last thing that I remember my teacher Kriya often saying is, we have to stop trying to control people. And I would say what we're talking about with attachment it's sort of a disorder of control. These are disorders of control. I'm trying to control my life. I'm trying to make my life what I want it to be. These are disorders of control, when we're grasping and clinging, trying to make things last that are impermanent of their own, of their nature, they're impermanent. And so in a sense, detachment is working with this idea of letting go of control. Again, it doesn't mean not caring. We can care open-heartedly, but we're just cutting through the delusion that we have more control than we think. We're cutting through the delusion that we have control over our lives in ways that we absolutely don't. That life is just life. It's happening. It's happening in us and around us all the time. And what we can do is be a witness to it and experience it fully without grasping, without clinging. So we'll end with our closing prayer. And if you would like, again, you might just close your eyes and join me mentally. And at the end, we'll do the Om Shanti mantra. O great spirits, saints and sages of all the world's religions, O holy Kriya lineage, thou knowest better than we that which each and every sentient being needs. It is for this and this alone that we meditate. We beseech you to bring it into their lives, surely, swiftly, and most harmoniously. Bless us now that we might be an even greater blessing to all sentient beings. Om Shanti And once again, namaste. It's really wonderful that we're able to be once again in person here at the temple. And in the coming weeks, we'll be having sort of hybrid. Some talks will be shown on the TV, which is behind me. Some talks will be in person. In a couple of weeks, Sylvia will be here at the end of July in person. And next week, we're going to actually have a live streamed Zoom talk given by a disciple who's in Tucson, Arizona. So look forward to seeing you here again, and it's a joy to be back in person at the temple. So thank you so much. Shanti.